So today we're going to talk about Gen Z and marriage. So I firmly believe this, and I've been thinking about this. I want to toss this to you, this thought, and just some thoughts I have about it. But I believe that Gen Z marriages stand no chance if they're godless.
Ooh.
I genuinely believe that godlessness is really messing over how Gen Z is creating their values, where they're getting their values from, how they look at the world is really coming kind of from a very negative place, everything that Gen Z has been fed. My heart really goes out to Gen Z mainly because they are entering into a world that is so much different than like what we grew up in. And I thought people were saying, like my mom, my dad were saying our generation was so like crazy. We're millennials.
They thought.
And when I see the stuff that's out now with Gen Z and some of the things they're getting into, whether the public school system, television, entertainment, just the various different things that are being thrown at them, here's let me just put it like this. So people always talk about tolerance in terms of ideologies that's out there, in terms of different things, but they don't have that same tolerance toward Christians or Christianity. But in reality, when we look at entertainment, when we look at television, when we look at education, all of that stuff, they're preaching various different ideologies, which you can almost say is dogma that's similar to what religious people, what Christians are accused of doing or have been doing. And I'm not saying that those accusations are wrong. I'm saying that this whole notion that we can't preach this message to kids, or we can't allow for children to be preached to about Christ and Jesus and stuff like that, when all we see constantly is Gen Z being advertised to different ideologies, all type of stuff, the most advertised generation there is. And so they're constantly being fed different things. And my heart goes out to them because I really don't feel that they stand a chance when it comes to marriage. And as we've seen with I think like with even like millennials with us, a lot of millennials are getting married much later. A lot of what we're experiencing is delayed. So marriage for us is getting pushed back, which that's not always a bad thing. So I'm not going to just take on face value, be like, oh, it's a negative that millennials are getting married later. In some cases, that might be a good thing. If you're not ready to get married, you should have the self-awareness. And we do have options, and we got, the independent woman and stuff like that now. And so women may be taking their time on that. So it's not necessarily always a bad thing with that, but you also see for those that do get married and things like that, it's a delay on when they get their first home. I was thinking about my mom and dad, and I'm almost 30, and my mom and dad definitely had their first home well before my age. I feel like they had their first home, I want to say probably mid-20s. And so I'm going to be 30 soon, and I don't have my first home. So you can see a delay even just in our own practice, like in our own practical life. And if that's the case for us, and we're seeing some of the negative effects, we were a generation that in our teens, we got social media, we got Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, even further back, MySpace and all that stuff. We experienced social media. We experienced, the smartphones and things like that, and, how big of a role it plays in our lives and things like that. And Gen Z, a lot of them are getting it right off the bat and things like that. They're entering a world that already these things are here, and we're struggling with it. I got a question for you, Cami.
What?
Did you know that over 50% of the people that watch our videos are not subscribed?
What y'all on?
So do us a quick favor. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell so you don't miss on any notification or future videos that we put out. And then also, that just also goes into like the access to like explicit imagery and things like that they're getting at even earlier ages. I just want to open this up to you and get what are your thoughts on Gen Z and marriage? Just thinking about from our experience as millennials.
I'm going to say it sounds tough, but I agree with you. And I think the biggest reason and thing that I'm seeing from Gen Z is how it's all about them. Like, a lot of things I see now on social media is if they're applying to a job, they get the job. If they don't like the job, goodbye.
Yep.
If they're not feeling the boss or the coworkers in, goodbye. Like, if I don't feel comfortable, if I don't feel like this benefits me most, I'm not about it. And so then you're talking about the conversation of marriage. And the thing is, you have to be selfless in a marriage. It's not just about you. It's not going to be about what feels good or feeling in love always, every single day, 24/7. So my thing is, I think it's an issue because when things get rough, when things are not comfortable or happy or, honeymoon stage. You have to stick through it. And that's what I think I'm seeing a lack of in Gen Z. Like, they just don't care. Family, I'm having a conflict with them, but I don't care. I'm dropping you. Whatever. And so it's really about that communication. No, we don't just drop it because we don't want to deal with it and we shouldn't have to. But we need to use healthy communication and discuss it and understand that there's somewhere where you can meet in the middle, where you can, decide that maybe I was actually wrong too. Things like that. And so that's why I feel like, yes, they really do lack it. And we know we need that. I know Jesus, always in the Bible was talking about when he was here on earth about doing things for your friends and being selfless and, you lay your life down, things like that. Just that whole mentality. And I'm not seeing a lot of that, which I feel is necessary in marriage.
Yeah.
And for it to be a successful marriage. So, yeah.
No, that's good. We're Americans. We're Black Americans. We have a unique experience also. But there have been a lot of values that, again, a lot of these values I didn't even know were biblical and came from the Bible until I'm now an adult and things like that. But you start to really realize how many things in our society was predicated off of Christian values, off of scriptural values and things like that, that were conducive to healthy living, that were conducive to healthy, godly living, or at the very least, even because I have my criticisms of cultural Christians, people that are culturally Christian, but not necessarily true believers and things like that. I got my criticisms of cultural Christianity, but one of the good things that came from it was that there is a culture of like, do unto others as you would like done unto yourself, the golden rule, things like that. There are various other things, how to deal with conflicts and different things like that. At bare minimum, 10 commandments, not to say that people live them out the best, but you still had a culture where this was the prevailing notion when it came to things. You still had that at the heartbeat, and you also still had people that were churchgoers, so they would hear truth at the very least, and they would get it. Whereas now, there's just, without God at the center of marriage, we know that like it's a lot harder if you're going to try to have, be together with a person, but you don't have any type of common values, or you don't have the same, like a standard that both of you can sit there and say, hey, it doesn't matter how I feel. It doesn't matter how you feel. This is what God wants of us. This is what God said in his word. And that really, God said it, that settles it. It doesn't matter if I agree, how I feel about it, or, whatever. We have a standard that we can point to in this case. And we even have a moral standard then when it comes to, adultery and things like that, stepping out of a marriage. It's a very clear standard in scripture that we can be held to. And we know all have sinned and come short of the glory. But yeah, it's something that I was just really thinking about. And I'm just kind of like, man, this was not the type of world I would have wanted to be born into. And it's one of those things where it's like, you sometimes will have that fear, even like, man, bringing kids into a world like this. But what I'll leave you all with is just this assurance that I've gotten is that that's why we need godly people to have children. That's why we need godly people to bring godly children into this world, because we need something to counteract. This world sounds bad, but if you really look throughout human history, it was worse. It's been worse than what it is. It's been much worse than what you could imagine. Even if you think about in America, like, it's been worse for different people groups. And so it may look grim in certain areas. We may see things and we may grieve at what future generations are going to experience, but understand that there is hope, and that we just have to continue to share the gospel with Gen Z and from an authentic place. And also we have to listen. We have to also, what scripture say, it says to be slow to speak, and quick to hear, swift to hear. And I think a lot of times what happens is we're slow to hear. We're the opposite of what we need to. We want to preach. We want to preach down to Gen Z. Yeah, we want Gen Z to hear us so bad. We want them to hear the gospel. We want them to live right. We want them to do all these different things. But we're not in any way listening. We're not actually adjusting our approaches. What does Apostle Paul says? He becomes all things to all people so that he may win some. Now, you won't win everybody doing that, but he knows that there are going to be some that he can make adjustments in his approach and how he does things to be able to reach them. He said for the Jews, he became as a Jew. For the Gentiles, as a Gentile in a sense. Not in compromise or sin, but in being able to relate to them and not trying to... The gospel is offensive enough. The Bible is offensive enough, but not adding extra sauce to it is what I think Apostle Paul was getting at with that. So, wow, those are our thoughts on this. Pray for Gen Z. But Before we head out, do us a favor. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell. And leave a comment. Let us know your thoughts.